of Economic Developers of Alberta. So Shane is going to moderate today. So welcome, Shane.
Thank you, Leanne. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see such a great turnout here for our monthly ministry meetup event. Today, we're going to be talking about employment, workforce, labor, and immigration. Each of our speakers will have about 6 to 8 minutes to cover their topic area. It's a great opportunity for you as members and as guests to interact and learn a little bit about some of the federal and provincial programs that might be out there, as well as interact with your fellow ministry staff and other colleagues here within the economic development profession. So today we do have guests from the Government of Canada. We have Mr. Chris Bates, who's going to be up first here shortly. He's the Director General with Canada Skills and Employment. We also have an addition from the province of Alberta, the Honourable Minister Demetrios Nicolaides with Alberta Advanced Education. And joining him, we have the Honourable Minister Jason Copping with Alberta Labour and Immigration. I'd also like to point out as well that we have with us here today Assistant Deputy Minister under Minister Copping's area of Workforce Strategies Division, Maryann Everett. She's joining us here today as well. So thank you, Maryann, for joining us. And finally, our last speaker today is going to be with the Vermax Group, Immigration Advisory and International Recruiting. Mr. Peter Veress is the president, and he'll be concluding our speaking engagement here today. As time permits, as Leanne mentioned, you can put your questions in the chat box, and as we go through the course of the hour here, if we have time at the end, we will get to those. I'd like to take a few moments to thank AUMA for partnering on these ministry meetups, and I'd like to invite Maureen O'Neill, the Senior Director, who's been very instrumental in setting up today's session as well, I might note, to say a few words on behalf of AUMA. Over to you, Maureen.
Hello, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Maureen O'Neill, and I am a Senior Director with the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association. Our association represents all the summer villages, towns, cities, and specialized municipalities in Alberta, where over 85% of Albertans live. I'm so happy to bring greetings on behalf of AUMA to today's session on employment, workforce, labor, and immigration. The past year has been very challenging for our municipalities, and AUMA has been finding new ways to provide support to our members. Since the early days of the pandemic, we have been hosting Maintaining Mental Fitness webinars, supporting mental health for those balancing work and just about everything else during the pandemic. To support our members as they recover from the low price of oil and the pandemic, our Economic Resiliency and Recovery Task Force will be submitting its final report to the AUMA board in March. The recommendations in this report will guide future AUMA activities on economic resiliency and recovery and provide resources to our members as they navigate their local economic situation. This task force was a true collaboration, and a few of my colleagues that led this initiative are on the call today as well. I won't put them on the spot, but hello to Jeff Henwood and Nicole Martel. Not on the meetup today, but he's been on every other one, is Clint Neufeld. He was the policy expert on the task force and is putting the final touches on the report, and he works very closely with our friends over at EDA. We also offer the Welcoming and Inclusive Communities Initiative, or as we call it affectionately here, WIC, to support community or municipal organizations to be more inclusive employers, service providers, or leaders in the community. Through WIC, we can help you set up training, offer toolkits, or connect you with other organizations that are leading in this area. If anyone on today's ministry meetup would like more information, please do reach out to us at advocacy@auma.ca. With that said, I'm happy to turn the discussion over to the group. Thank you.
Very good, and we welcome Mr. Chris Bates, up first with Director General with Canada Skills and Employment.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today on this very important topic. So Chris Bates, Director General with Apprenticeship and Sectoral Initiatives Directorate at Employment and Social Development Canada. So I work in a branch that's called the Skills and Employment Branch, and I'll just give a bit of a brief overview of what we do at the Skills Employment Branch. We're all about promoting skills development and trying to look at labor market efficiencies. We support employment and skill needs of those facing barriers, as well as we look at providing temporary income support to Canadians. So What that really means in practice is we're responsible for a number of programs, including the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, Employment Insurance Program, including the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, Labor Market Transfer Agreements, Indigenous Programming, Youth Programming, Persons with Disability Programming, Apprenticeship Programming, and Newcomers Programming. So that's basically the program, some of the programs that we're responsible for at the Skills Employment Branch. I'm going to speak to you in a little bit in more detail about some of those programs and how and see how we might be able to work together on some of those. So all of those programs that I mentioned are very much in line with today's topic around employment, workforce, labor, and immigration. Let's say that it's likely that there's going to be a federal budget over the next coming months, and we're very busy looking at exactly those themes and what we can do to support Canadians throughout the pandemic, but also coming out of the pandemic, and what the best course of action with that is, especially getting Canadians back to work in good jobs. We're taking a lot of our cues from the recent speech from the Throne and the Fall Economic Statement. There was announcements around creating 1 million jobs, good jobs for Canadians, further bolstering training supports for those hardest hit by the pandemic, as well as looking at how we build a more resilient and inclusive labor market. And of course, broader themes around environment and so forth as well. So with me, I have 3 different programs that are under my responsibility that I'll talk to you a little bit about now. They are apprenticeship programming, foreign credential recognition programming, and a program called the Sectoral Initiatives Program. I'll start with the Sectoral Initiatives Program. So we know that the pandemic hit different sectors in different ways, and also that sectors will need to come out as they recover in different ways, and they'll have different needs. So that's really the purpose behind this program, is how do we work with different sectors in the Canadian economy and support them to have more resilient workforce. There's a lot of economy of scale, so we work a lot with employers to determine how we best support them to do human resource functions. We look at sector-specific training, mobilizing employers. We look at labor market information, creating standards, and so forth, as well as we look at just more generally, like what are the workforce development solutions that we can support. I'll flag right now that we do have an active call for proposals out right now. The best way probably to find that is not for me to give you a long link, but rather to search Sectoral Initiatives Program through Google, and it should be the first link that pops up. And then there's a funding link if you're interested in that program. Also with apprenticeship, so we have a number of apprenticeship supports out there federally that we deliver. So we deliver Union Training and Innovation Program. We deliver a program called Skills, Trades, and Readiness Program. It's basically a pre-apprenticeship program trying to get youth interested into the trades and participating in the trades. We have a number of grants, so apprenticeship incentive grants and completion grants for apprentices. We also fund Skills Canada. A recent announcement with the federal apprenticeship programming is that we're looking at creating a Canadian apprenticeship strategy. And really that's going to be focused about how do we improve participation in the trades? How do we remove barriers to those completing the trades or participating in the trades? And how do we support progression in the trades? There's also been a recent commitment through mandate letters and budgets to look at an apprenticeship service whereby we would pay employers up to $10,000 for every new apprenticeship position that they actually create. So we're currently working on a number of those initiatives with the apprenticeship space, recognizing as well that collaboration with provinces and territories is key for that particular initiative. On the other program I'm responsible for is the Foreign Credential Recognition Program. And in the Fall Economic Statement, there was just an additional $15 million announced for 2021 for that program. But really what that is recognizing the importance of skilled newcomers to the Canadian economy and providing additional supports to them to help them get jobs that they're actually trained in. Recognizing that there's all kinds of barriers to skilled newcomers getting actual work experience in their field of study. So with that, we offer loans of up to $15,000 to skilled newcomers as they're trying to get their credentials recognized. Often there's lots of costs associated with that. So we give up to $15,000 to offset some of those costs so that they can focus on getting their credentials recognized so that they can actually work in Canada. We look at mobility. We look to get skilled newcomers work experience in Canada. And we also work a lot with provinces, territories, and regulators. And also another thing that we do is look at alternative careers that are still in their field of study while they pursue, if they so choose, to their final preferred occupation. So I think that's just a brief overview of some of the programs that we're looking at federally. All of these are grants and contributions programs that are delivered by third-party organizations. Typically, we do call for proposals for those programs that are all accessible on the internet. But so those are just a few of the programs that we're delivering at the Skills and Employment branch that directly touch on the theme today. And happy to answer any questions later on any of those topics. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. I noted a couple of people suggested it'd be helpful to have some links. We could either send those out after, but if you have a moment and you want to pop one of those key links or one or two in the chat box, feel free to do that as well.
Sure.
We're going to hand things over now to Minister Nicolaides with Alberta Advanced Education. Welcome.
Sure, Shane, thank you so much. And Leanne, great to see you, and it's a pleasure to be here. Apologies in advance. You can probably see behind me some scaffolding. There's some renovation work happening around the legislature these days. So you'll probably hear the occasional drilling or banging noise. So apologies in advance for that. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. There's indeed a tremendous focus these days, on the importance of skill development and the important role that post-secondary education plays in strengthening our economy and providing for strong economic opportunities. Within my ministry, perhaps I'll give you a very quick snapshot of some of the things that we do. Within my ministry, we're primarily responsible for the broad extent of higher education. So that includes everything from foundational learning programs, oftentimes literacy and oftentimes basic literacy and numeracy programs for adult and mature learners, and everything to, of course, advanced degrees, PhDs, doctoral research, and working in collaboration with our post-secondary institutions. Of course, in Alberta, we have 26 publicly funded post-secondary institutions that I work with. And furthermore, we also, at the Ministry of Advanced Education, also sets the standards and is the regulator and registrar when it comes to apprenticeship programming. And so that's all housed within the Ministry of Advanced Education. There are a number of different initiatives and programs that we operate, as I mentioned, that help to provide opportunities for foundational learners, doctoral students, apprenticeship learners, and everybody in between. I'll touch on a couple of them, but I think I'll frame it by saying we're very much looking at higher education through the lens of what we are calling skills for jobs. So it's recognizing that I would say two fundamental pieces. The first is that there are areas in which we have labor market shortages, and we do need to see greater workforce development in those areas. So within Alberta, of course, we know we have labor market shortages in fields like aviation or the trades. Specifically in the trades, we have a very large shortage that's projected, and we will see thousands of skilled trades professionals retire every year. So we've designed some initiatives and created some programs to help encourage more young people to pursue educational opportunities and career opportunities in the trades to help fill some of those gaps. So the first part has to do with helping to make sure that our system responds to labor market needs and demands. And then the second part of that has to do with ensuring that our graduates, regardless of their program, regardless of what their career aspirations are, that they develop the skills that employers are looking for. We know oftentimes there is a mismatch, the proverbial skills gap that is often discussed between what employers are looking for and between what skills sometimes our graduates bring to the workforce. So we're working to find ways in which we can bring employers and post-secondary institutions closer together to mitigate that skills gap so that our students are graduating job ready, or graduating with the skills and competencies that are needed for them to excel in their chosen professions and careers. So within that context, some of the things that we are doing, we are working with an organization called Careers, the Next Generation, that provides apprenticeship training opportunities for high school students. We hope to quadruple the number of high school students that participate in the registered apprenticeship program in high schools. We've also provided funding to an organization called Women Building Futures, which helps to train women to enter trades occupations, which is an area where women are significantly underrepresented. We also provide funding to Skills Canada Alberta to help showcase Alberta talent on the global stage. In November, I recently announced, in terms of working with our post-secondary institutions to support the innovation and research capacity of our province. In November, I announced 15 million in new funding to support 1,400 new research-based internships, again, to support and strengthen the innovation capacity of our province. And we are also, and I would love to connect back with this group at a future time, we're also about to cross the finish line in the development of Alberta 2030, which is a 10-year strategic plan for the post-secondary system. It's probably the first time in at least a couple of decades that our post-secondary system will have a strategic plan. And we will be seeking within that strategic plan to, of course, expand access, improve the student experience, strengthen that aspect of skills for jobs. And within that pillar, just a quick pause, one of the areas that we are exploring is work integrated learning. And we are exploring the possibility of developing an ambitious goal to become the first province in Canada to offer every student a work integrated learning opportunity. Thirdly, as part of our 10-year strategic plan, we're looking at ways in which we can strengthen the innovation and research capacity of our institutions. Fourthly, we're looking at efforts to expand the internationalization of our system to both encourage domestic students to find opportunities abroad and to encourage more international students to bring their expertise to Alberta. Of course, a lot of that is COVID dependent. And finally, our fifth and sixth key pillars of the Alberta 20 strategy as we are developing it relate to ensuring we have a financially sustainable system, of course. So our province is facing some challenging financial challenges. And so we need to ensure that we have the right formula to ensure a financially viable and sustainable system. And lastly, we're taking a close look at governance to ensure that we have mechanisms in place through the right committees, commissions, or other agencies and bodies to incent and encourage the strongest possible degree of collaboration and cooperation amongst our institutions, because of course that just yields greater results. So we're hoping to finalize that strategic plan at the end of March and hoping to be able to release it publicly in the beginning of April. Again, would be happy to come back to this group with even more details and chat about it further. But again, our broad focus, especially during these times as we think about hopefully the end of the pandemic and being able to put that behind us hopefully very soon when more vaccines are available, to the economic recovery that will need to follow. And so again, looking at higher education through the lens of skills for jobs, making sure that our graduates are set up for success in the best possible way, and that our post-secondary system is helping to contribute, as it always does, to a prosperous society, province for all of us. So I'll leave it there, Shane, and
Thank you.
there'll be some questions later, but thank you for that introduction.
Yes, thank you very much, Minister. And for your leadership as well and the work that you're doing in this area. There is a question in the chat box. We'll get to it a little later. It's regarding paid placements and will they be promoted as part of your processes. So I'll leave that one with you to contemplate, and we'll turn to your colleague for right now, Minister Copping with Alberta Labour and Immigration, and we'll come back to the questions a little later on. Minister Copping, feel free to proceed when you're ready.
Can you hear me, Shane?
We can. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me, and pleased to be here with my colleague, Minister Nicolaides. Often get asked the question in terms of, especially when we're talking about training and we're talking about workforce planning, sort of where we draw the lines between advanced education and labor and immigration. And I look at it this way. So in terms of training is an important part for both of our organizations. We're focusing more on retraining, sort of on a shorter term basis, not necessarily full programs and certifications, where Minister Nicolaides is looking at how do we fill that gap, both medium term and longer term. And also because we're responsible for immigration, we look at that as a tool, which is one way you can liken to it is an external hire outside of the province, but bringing people in where there's a shortage and be able to get them working faster because we can't train them soon enough to be able to get to support our workforce. As Minister Nicolaides indicated, right now our government's focus is, quite frankly, on COVID and dealing with COVID. We've launched a number of programs. The critical worker benefit we just launched last week, which is recognizing the tremendous work that some frontline workers have done in supporting Albertans through the pandemic, people who continue to come to work and provide services. So we launched that last week. And then as many of your members will know, we also announced last week a support for businesses, sort of the small businesses support 3.0. We have committed up to $500 million for this program. And just as a reminder, so that our members can, when they're dealing with businesses, that they can get their applications in by March 31st to be eligible for the small and medium enterprise relaunch grant, and which will provide additional $10,000 in support for businesses. But we need to look ahead. As Minister Nicolaides indicated, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Vaccinations are rolling out. Ideally, we'd like to be faster, but they are coming. And we now need to focus on economic recovery. Part of our economic recovery plan, which we announced in June, is build, infrastructure, and diversification. And as we all know, it's not only you need investment capital and a environment to attract that investment capital, we need human capital to grow. And our focus, quite frankly, is getting Albertans back to work and helping to create jobs. So from labor and immigration standpoint, our job is about how do we get people retrained where there is growth, because we all know that there's still high unemployment rate right now. Even though it's dropping, we still haven't got to pre-pandemic levels. We're sitting at a very high 10%. And even though we had tremendous improvement just last month, in Alberta, which is better improvement than we had elsewhere in Canada, it still remains high. But it's high in some sectors. In other sectors, for example, like IT, there is a shortage. So how do we use training to take advantage, potentially in the shorter term, to take people where there's high unemployment to lower unemployment? And so we've developed programs to help do that. We are spending nearly $41 million for skills and training supports. We have a program called Training for Work, which invests $26 million in 38 communities to support training and employment needs of unemployed in Albertans. And that particular program is funding, and we thank the federal government because it's through the joint funding programs and funding that we get through the federal government that supports programs like this. But that is supporting the program. So for example, and I'll use an IT example, we have a third party which makes a bid, applies for it. They open up a certain number of spots. An example we have here in Calgary is SAIT, which are training coders. And to be able to get the payment, they have to have a 70% placement rate outside of that program. either people in jobs or taking further education. And we found, high degrees of success, exceeding far beyond 70% in terms of that program, which is providing the workforce that employers need. Another example, and many of your members and employers will be aware of, is the Canada Alberta Job Grant Program, which approved $13.1 million to support more than 1,500 unique employers and 5,000 unique trainees this year. And we made some changes to that program to be able to broaden it, given the current circumstances that we're in. Some of these changes temporarily include allowing different retraining costs associated with that, and these training costs include course fees as travel costs as well. And allowing a broader segment of the population to be able to access this training program. And this is critically important because what we're trying to do here is to reduce the cost to employers to be able to hire Albertans while at the same time get the skills that employees need. And I'd like to point out, and this has occurred beforehand, but if you have someone on EI, that program will cover 100% of the training costs. And in addition to that programs, we're also looking at developing new programs, the Premier has indicated, to be able to reduce the cost of training, plus retraining and get Albertans back to work. And stay tuned, we'll be making an announcement in that shortly. So that's what I would call the training side. I just want to touch on a few of those. We also have the immigration side. And as part of our Alberta Advantage immigration strategy, we are looking at newcomers playing a critical role in helping to rebuild Alberta's economy. Because as we all know, newcomers coming into Alberta, especially through the economic streams, and these are the streams that the Alberta government has some influence and supports, is that they bring an entrepreneurial spirit, and not only create jobs for themselves, but create jobs for other Albertans. So there's 3 new streams that is part of our immigration strategy. 2 we have already launched. So late last year and then earlier this year, we established the Foreign Graduate Startup Visa Program, and the International Graduate Entrepreneur Program immigration stream. And both of those attract newcomers. One is graduating from our great post-secondary institutions here in Alberta, and then giving them a path to set up a business as an entrepreneur, create jobs for themselves and other Albertans. And the second is for foreign graduates. We're targeting US schools to come here and set up businesses in Alberta. And both of these will create jobs for not only for the newcomers, but also for Albertans. And then what we're developing right now, we've announced previously, and we'll be launching over the next couple of months, is a rural entrepreneur stream. So inviting newcomers to come to Alberta, buy businesses in rural areas or start businesses in rural areas, and again, create jobs for themselves and for Albertans. So at the end of the day, we are focused on getting through COVID at this point in time, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And then as we get finished or do more vaccinations through these programs, both from the training side and the immigration side, to kickstart economic recovery. And we're committed to doing this for Albertans every step of the way. And I'm happy to take questions on any of these programs. And please be joined by Maryann Everett, ADM of Workforce Strategies, who can also ask some of the detailed questions on some of our programs. Thanks very much, Shane.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you to both yourself and Minister Nicolaides as well for your leadership and support of the Economic Development Association of Alberta. I know you've been big fans of us, and you're helping to promote our cause and help us communicate back and forth between our association and different levels of government. So thank you very much for that as well. I just wanted to see if Peter Veress is on the call. I'm not sure if he made it on with Vermax Group. Peter, are you with us today? If we don't have Peter, then what we'll do is I'll get Nancy to help me, or Leanne, with the Q&A, and we'll open things up with some of the questions that we had in the box. So a couple of the ones, there was a recent question, I guess, on the last one by Maryann regarding what are the plans for AINP? Minister Copping, did you want to address that last question, or who would that be best suited for? Do we need to expand?
Sure, happy to chat about that. So we have been delayed, as indicated we did significant consultation in regards to the Alberta Advantage immigration strategy. And we were supposed to roll that out last spring. Then COVID happened, which impacted a number of newcomers coming to Alberta. And then also, one of our big concerns about launching all of those early on is that there's substantial amount of evidence that shows when newcomers come during an economic downturn, that negatively impacts them for their entire careers. It's much harder to get established. So we held off launching that. We've done 2 of the entrepreneurial streams, the student streams. The other 2 streams, one, the rural entrepreneur stream, is coming within the next few months. We also have a rural renewal stream, which we're holding off a little bit on that. Part of it is just to get the economic recovery to start to happen. So again, we're looking at second quarter of this year, and then we will move into an assessment of the AAIS, the other streams generally, in terms of how do we further improve it. One thing we're looking at right now, and I'm going to tip our hand a little bit, we haven't made this announcement, but we are going to be reaching out to the community from consultation, because we have heard, particularly for those in the tech industry, that we have a shortage of senior individuals in the tech industry. And so, which limits our ability to retrain those, because we have tremendous talent already within Alberta that coming out of the oil and gas industry, geologists, which they're data scientists. But the ability to be able to retrain them in the tech industry and outside of the oil and gas, but we don't have senior people to be able to lead them. So how do we fast track this? So we are developing a process for consultation, and we'll be reaching out, quite frankly, to your organization in the coming weeks to be involved in that, so we can fast track and target growth. And this is part of our diversification strategy, particularly on the tech side.
Very good. Thank you for that response. Eleanor McLeod had a comment about skill development. I think going back to Minister Nicolaides from Advanced Education, will paid placements be promoted in the process? And then there was a little bit of a build question from Natalie Gibson, agreeing with that collaboration in the truest sense is a key piece, referencing the 10-year strategic plan and paid placement work options. I guess there's a shortage of nurses, in particular in rural communities. However, there's a large gap in graduates from nursing schools and the level of experience they need for a rural community. Any comments around that theme?
Sure, yes, would be happy to comment on that. And I saw Eleanor's comment there in the chat regarding work integrated learning. We'll certainly be looking at opportunities to promote paid placements where possible. As I mentioned in November, we made an announcement of an investment of $15 million over 3 years to support 1,400 paid research-based internships. So those will be paid as per that announcement. But ultimately, it depends on the employer. It depends on the nature of the work integrated learning opportunity. It could be an internship, a co-op, or a practicum. So it's very possible some will be paid and some may not. Again, that ultimately depends on the nature of the opportunity that the employer wants to put forward. But I do think that the government can find the right opportunity to provide strategic resources and support where possible to help some employers overcome some of the initial hurdles. Because I have heard from many employers that there are barriers and challenges to them bringing on interns or co-op students, and I think that the government can work with them and find ways to provide them with the necessary support to overcome some of those barriers and challenges. In terms of Natalie, your point around nurses, this is precisely why we're looking at higher education through the lens of skills for jobs and labor market alignment to ensure that we are producing the graduates that our economy and workforce needs. I know in many medical programs and in physicians, in physician programs, there are rural placement programs to help some of those physicians gain work integrated learning opportunities in rural Alberta. A lot of the nuances though, especially I know you're asking about nurses, but as it relates to physicians, is managed by Alberta Health Services and the Ministry of Health in terms of what IDs they permit and what they allow in the different municipal or regional parts of our province. So it is a collaboration between both ministries. That being said, our medical programs across the post-secondary system are one of the most popular programs oftentimes. And many, if not all of our colleges that operate and that have a defined geographic region that they're responsible offer a variety of different medical programs, including nursing and other programs. And there are very oftentimes collaborative agreements with degree granting institutions to make those degrees available. So certainly looking at it from that perspective of making sure that we are filling regional workforce needs and training that talent as well.
Mr., what are some of the opportunities as people are looking at some of the programs? There's a comment about accessing childcare and whether there'll be any considerations to additional universal childcare or different sorts of childcare programs. Are there any innovative solutions you've seen, perhaps with some of your post-secondary partners around childcare and ensuring that nobody's left in the gap in terms of being able to study and have someone look after their children?
Yeah, 100%. We do provide a number of different grants and bursaries and incentives for individuals to be able to participate in post-secondary education. And oftentimes there is some wide discretion about what those grants can be used for. Many of those grants can be used to cover daycare or other childcare related costs. And of course, I have been working with my colleague, Minister Schultz in Children's Services to see how we can, what we can do to ensure that childcare doesn't become a significant barrier to anybody accessing post-secondary education. And that's why we've tried to maintain a wide discretionary guardrails around how grants and bursaries can be used. And as I mentioned, oftentimes those can be used to cover childcare related costs as well.
Very good. Thank you for that. I don't think, unfortunately, Peter had something come up. Peter, unless you're there, I think he had Peter Veress from Vermax Group. So we will have a little bit longer chance to have some more questions and collaboration. And if there's any questions for Chris Bates as well, let us know. I had a chance to pop on the website there. It looks like the deadline for the Sectoral Initiatives Program, Chris, is coming up March 4th for those that were interested. So thank you very much for sharing that link as well. I believe for Minister Copping, there was a question here from Pam Cholak regarding the labor mobility work that was discussed last year. Is there any update regarding some of that labor mobility work?
Great question. Thanks so much there, Pam. By way of background, a study was done that sort of looked at labor mobility and the opportunity that it can present if we decrease the barriers to labor mobility across internally, that it can produce tremendous gains from a GDP standpoint in Alberta, even going forward alone, not with all the other provinces. We are looking at potential legislation on that. Now, that's not coming up in this session. It will be coming up in the fall session to be able to do that. But it's based on the premise that by reducing the overall barriers and improving the movement of workers into Alberta, and then ideally across the entire country, you get the skill set that you need when you need them, and then you promote economic growth. So the studies have proven that. So we're likely looking at coming at that in the fall. And really one way to take a look at that is we already have trade agreements internally within Canada and the new West partnerships. So it's actually moving those even forward even further to reduce the barriers and promote economic growth within Alberta.
Very good. I think a follow-up question, Minister, is here's a comment here from Bree Fitzpatrick about international remote work options. So will that actually be something that we could use as a tool to lower our unemployment rate in our future planning? It sounds like we have some of the tools in place to do that, and your ministry is looking at other opportunities around that. Any comments around that piece further? So let's talk about collaborative international remote work options.
Yeah, it's a good point in terms of, and that can cut both ways. So where there's a shortage in Alberta, and then people being able to work remotely, then be able to promote growth. Because the one issue is that if I can't grow because I'm missing a key field, and then I can hire other people, then so is that a possibility that may happen naturally without government involvement in that regard? What we are focusing on is actually bringing people here to create the job and the economic activity here, because we also recognize that we want to train. We recognize that newcomers can bring skills here, entrepreneurial spirit, and also create the jobs here. So I think that's going to happen, and that's going to happen regardless. Our objective is actually creating opportunities to bring people here, create the jobs here for not only the newcomers but Albertans as well.
Very good. Okay, Peter has joined us, so we're going to jump over to Peter, and then we'll see if we can take a few more questions. Peter, welcome. Peter again is with Vermax Group. He works in immigration advisory and international recruiting, and he's the president of the company, and we welcome him to say a few. We've got about 6 minutes, I guess, Peter, and then we can go back to questions.
Thank you very much, Shane. First of all, I have to apologize profusely. There was some technical glitch with my connection, and I was only able to connect now, and I do apologize. I'm coming late to this conversation. I'd like to get a little bit more, maybe a little bit more context, and I'll be more than happy to sort of give a little blurb at the end, if that's okay with you, Shane. Just so that I understand what has been said. I certainly don't want to repeat myself, unless you want me to just give my.
Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what you do. That would be great first.
Absolutely.
And your firm.
Yeah, I am a former immigration officer. I've been in the, I worked for the federal government as a senior immigration officer. Then I left the department. I went into private practice, and for the last 25 years, I've been working in Alberta, and we basically specialize in a number of areas, corporate immigration, and we're bringing basically top talent from around the world to corporations and companies. We represent the city of Calgary on immigration matters, and we also we do business immigration. We bring business immigrants from around the world who want to set up a presence here in Canada, or at least in Alberta. And through that process, I establish a company and also immigrate through that process. And finally, we do a lot of labor immigration, although not so much lately, as you can imagine. But certainly, there was a time where we were bringing in a large cohort of temporary foreign workers, mostly to the civil construction industry, and to other sort of primary and secondary areas of industry. So that's sort of in a nutshell what I do. I just wanted to quickly just say a few things, if I may. I understand that the minister might have already expressed or explained what the plan is for the new programs, the Alberta Advantage Immigration Strategy. Has he had an opportunity to speak to that?
Briefly, yeah. Maybe you can tell us about any challenges, since we have the minister on the line today too. Challenges that you're seeing, whether it's in a COVID environment, or what are some of the things or opportunities maybe that you're finding right now?
Absolutely, there are some opportunities. As you know, the department, and again, I don't want to sort of, I don't want to repeat what the minister has already said, but there are a number of initiatives that the department has embarked on, two international student programs, and I think he spoke about that, and then the two new ones that are going to be rolled out. One is a rural employment program, and the other one is a rural entrepreneur program for the province of Alberta. I'm wondering if he had actually set out some timelines for those, but those are coming from what I understand. The challenge is, so far, we welcome any initiative that actually opens up the province to newcomers and entrepreneurs and students. And I think students are a big part of all this. The challenge in my mind, and I would like to maybe ask the minister if he has a moment, is that when we're talking about the rural employment program, there are two federal programs that are already designed to do just that, to bring newcomers and immigrants to rural and northern communities and to municipalities, smaller municipalities. And so I'm just wondering what the overlap is there, and if there is an overlap, and could we use those resources a little more focused so that we're not, sort of duplicating something that's already being done. Because as you know, there are two programs that the federal government has rolled out. One is called the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot, and the other one is the Municipal Nomination Program that is just starting now. Now, I look at, for example, I look at the municipal program, I look at the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot, which has been around for about a year, and I was looking at the statistics, and we're looking at maybe having landed about 50 people in that, in that program. So it begs the question, and we have to sort of retweak that and say, okay, what can we do better so that we're not, 50 immigrants that come in through that program in 1 year. There's a question as to whether, first of all, we have to wonder whether that's 50 permanent principal applicants or is 50 principal applicants and spouses and children and dependents, because that means there's only about 17 people that have been landed on that program. And if that's the case, then what are we doing better so that we can enhance the impact of whatever program we're rolling out? You know what I mean?
Right. I'm not sure if the minister has a comment on that, Minister Copping, or?
Yeah, no, pleased to comment on that, and thanks so much for the question, Peter. We recognize that when we ran on our platform and the rural renewal plan was before the federal government announced their municipal plan, but after the pilot was put in place, our objective here is similar in terms of how do we get into rural Alberta on the renewal side, the skills that are needed, and leveraging local municipalities and, quite frankly, EDAs, right? And so in developing our program, which we are going to be rolling out in the coming months, we're not quite ready yet, just given COVID. We looked hard at the pilot that's going on in Alberta, learned some lessons from that. And my understanding is that our officials are continuing to talk with officials in your department, because again, it's a joint project to make sure that we're not overlap, and we can use. We have both sets of government. There's only one taxpayer. Both sets of governments have limited resources, so that we can actually use that wisely. Our recommendation was, allow us to move forward with ours, maybe hold back on yours from the municipal standpoint for a little bit and get that in place and see whether or not that suits both the needs. But I think there's going to be ongoing conversations between levels of government, because we don't want to be tripping over each other. And really what we're at is, quite frankly, we're trying to solve the same problem, which is how do we ensure in certain rural areas that we have the skill sets that we need and that people stay there after they come in, and we can grow the populations within those areas.
Absolutely. The retention is absolutely critical on these things. And can I just do a follow-up? Shane, do you have time just for a quick follow-up?
Yeah, we have a couple minutes for a follow-up, sure. Yeah.
So Mr. Copping, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but so we're rolling out some of these programs, these 4 new initiatives, which I applaud, and I think we certainly welcome, and the people that we've talked to in the community have sort of looked at this and said that those are good initiatives. But are we sending out a bit of a mixed message out there when we say that we're cutting back 30% of our allocation, our AMP allocation, so our selection powers basically. We didn't shut down the temporary foreign worker program, but we've left with 29 occupations that are still available, but beyond that, not much. And I'm just wondering, there is a message that comes out of the government that we're open for business. We want to attract people. We want to attract people into these smaller municipalities, and we want to create sort of bring entrepreneurs, but the people I speak with and my colleagues and we have a bit of difficulty when we talk to foreign students who are saying, look, on the one hand, we're trying to encourage them to come. On the other hand, we're cutting down on the allocations, which sends a mixed message in that saying, if we have to come to Alberta to study, if you want to come to Alberta to study, the likelihood of being nominated for permanent residence upon finishing our program is a little bit more restricted because of the allocation, the 30% allocation cut back.
Minister?
So, well, thanks for the question. I made some comments earlier.
And I apologize for that.
But we strongly support newcomers as a source for growth within the province, creating jobs for themselves and creating jobs for other Albertans, and filling a skill set and filling the skills gap on a short-term basis, right? And then we need newcomers for longer-term economic growth. And our premier, as one of the longest-serving federal ministers of immigration, understands, to a great detail of the importance of newcomers and add benefits not only economically but from a social fabric standpoint. So all that said, what the issue is trying to match what's going on in the local economic environment, in terms of the labor market, with the number of people that come in. So this is my conversations with your boss, Minister Mendocino, which is we want to pause some of the numbers, and these are the numbers, just so you know, through that we would have allocated through AINP, of looking at, okay, the government sort of selecting people through the federal programs to come to Alberta, not employers selecting them. And we actually scaled that back given COVID, but also it's in recognition of the studies that when you invite people, newcomers to, and this has been borne out, and actually some of these major studies happen here in Canada, when you invite newcomers when there's a downturn in the economy, their ability to find work, they're often the first impacted, and that's particularly challenging. So, like my conversation with Minister Mendocino is, I want to match it better to the current labor market realities. But what I do is, I want when I come to Minister Mendocino in a couple of years and saying, now I want those numbers back. I just want it in the future, right? Not right now. So it's I understand it's a more complicated message, but really our message is we fully understand that the tremendous role that newcomers play in terms of the vibrancy of our province. We welcome newcomers. We put 2 new programs for entrepreneurs, for students, one foreign students and one within students here who are graduating from the University of Calgary, welcoming them on the entrepreneur stream. We're rolling out new streams as well, additionally, and those slots that we put a pause on last year, I'm going to ask them for them back in future years, so you can tell your minister that as well. That would be good.
Okay, I think we'll leave that there. We'll have a few more minutes. Thank you very much for the questions. There is a comment in the box for Chris Bates regarding from Bert Roche. Might have to take that one offline, Bert, with Chris, but Bert was looking for some strategies around, I don't know if you saw that question, Chris, and if you have any comments.
Yeah, maybe just super quickly, I can comment on that. Unfortunately, we have a policy of everything has to be open, transparent, so I can't comment on any specific policy, but my best advice always is we spend a lot of time developing what's called the Applicant's Guide, which is how you details how you apply. So my best advice for any program is just to carefully read that Applicant's Guide and make sure you respond directly to what's in that Applicant's Guide, and use that as your guide when you're developing proposals. Sorry, I can't be more specific, but it's one of our policies.
No problem. And thank you very much for that, Chris. Hopefully that's helpful, Bert, and you can take that on offline. There was a question here, a comment as well for Minister Nicolaides, I think it was, from Pam Cholak regarding veterinary medicine, and if there's an opportunity to think outside the box in terms of funding and learning models in particular for different programs. I don't know if there's any comments on that.
Yeah, sure. I did see the question there and the comment there, Pam. Thank you so much for that. I think the short answer to your question is yes. You're inquiring as to whether or not government would be open to offering tax incentives to employers that create work integrated learning opportunities. I think the short answer is yes. We have to look at all of the options. Obviously, we have to do our due diligence and do a real detailed analysis of both the tax implications to government and, of course, the effectiveness for employers, if that's incentive enough to actually create the needed, work integrated learning spaces that we're hoping to do. So I think, in short, let's look at all the options. Let's do our diligence and evaluate them thoroughly, and let's pursue the policies and the programs that are going to be most effective. So certainly happy to look at that in more detail. Thank you for the comment.
Thank you. And I think on that, we're approaching 1 o'clock. I'm going to wrap things up for today. I want to thank very much both ministers for being involved in our discussions today. Peter, thank you so much for coming. I know you were a little bit late, but it was nice to have a little bit of dialogue there very quickly, and to Chris Bates as well. Thank you so much for joining us.